Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, I wanted to go over actually strategies that you can implement to actually help an avoidant become more secure in the relationship without you guys having to break up, without you guys having to go through so many hoops of the relationship, like off and on, putting or applying too much pressure. None of those things. We're talking about some things that you can actually put into the relationship that's pretty streamlined, hopefully streamlined, that can help your partner to actually be more motivated to change and actually subconsciously heal some of these things. But before we talk about that, I'm not saying it's your responsibility to heal somebody. Actually, I'm giving you this because sometimes being with an avoidant can be so frustrating that sometimes you're looking for any little thing you can do to just get the pressure off yourself, in the sense where you don't have to worry and be anxious so much. And this can work. And so why would I not give that to you if it can actually fix things? If you want to do something, this can help. If you don't want to, this isn't going to help, because these are more actionable for you as a partner. But if you want your partner to do something, suggest them to go to therapy or suggest them to heal about other things that they're struggling with. I do have a video about how to heal avoidant attachment for the actual avoidant, but this one is actually to help you as a partner, help your partner to be more secure. The first one is actually to create what could be considered a safe space from their perspective. And I'm going to define it in a little bit more clarity so that you know what that means, because for every individual is different. Anxious individuals, it's with a lot more reassurance, but with avoidance, especially dismissive avoidance, it's actually allowing of a more calm, and I want to say non-demanding perspective communication strategy. And you might actually allow a little bit of space between checking up on things. And so that doesn't mean give them like 5 days, but it means that after a fight, give them maybe like 2 hours before you ask, are they doing okay? Or if you guys had a fight and it's like midday and you guys usually check in, say good morning to each other, you might wait until that good morning. Or if you have a date, just relax, leave it, and then maybe just show up on the date. And then if you guys want to talk about the disagreement or the touchy subject you had, you can. But sometimes what avoidants do, which I think is very different from other attachment styles, is sometimes they need time away from something, and usually they're fine. They don't need that reassurance or that comfort that things are okay. They usually just regulate inwardly and then they show up and they're usually fine. But if that's interrupted, that can be pressuring or threatening to them to some extent, which is why creating a more softer, inviting type of space in your communication can help, depending on your partner. But those are just some ways to do it. It's also to not be necessarily focused on them fixing things or you fixing things to some extent, but more about them fixing things, because it can feel threatening because they feel like you don't like who they are. The next one is you want to be consistent, but you don't want to be too demanding to some extent, because a lot of times if it's too much, avoidance might feel like it's not genuine. And a lot of people think avoidance would want someone who's like completely detached like they are. No, that's not true. Most people want someone to show that they care genuinely, because if they really wanted someone detached, they would just probably not want anyone, because most avoidants don't really want anyone at all. And so if they want you, they still want you to be there. It's not that they don't like you. A lot of people think you have to become an avoidant for an avoidant to like you. That they like you, so they like you for who you are. You don't need to modify it too much. Just be slowly consistent. That builds trust, and it also creates a stable, predictable environment. But remember, we're not talking about we're trying to appeal to them to make them stay avoidant. We want them to become secure. And so even if they did want you to be really, really, really distant, which most avoidants don't, if you do that, that's not helping them heal. Remember that healing is also about challenging certain aspects and behaviors, etc. And so you want to be consistent to some extent, but you don't want to be overly demanding, because that can create that trigger that they feel. And it helps to readjust their expectations about relationships in general. It means that you maintain your own emotional fulfillment, friends, family, job, hobbies, etc., but you also have them as part of your life. So they're one of the categories of your emotional fulfillment. They're not the only category, but they're one of the many categories. And they will understand that and feel that, because you're going to behave in that manner. The next one is you want to be comfortable with conflict resolution and not always bringing up old issues. Anyone who watches my channel for even just a little bit knows how much I stand by this, because when I'm working with couples, one of the themes that almost every single avoidant brings up is that they just want to sometimes leave issues be. That doesn't mean they don't want to ever touch those issues and talk about them. They just don't want it always on and on. And usually if it's an avoidant and their partner is anxious, the anxious individual wants to bring it up because that's what makes them feel better. And so we want a balance. It doesn't mean never bring things up. That's not fair. We're talking about trying to be secure as a couple. And so you want to be comfortable with conflict resolution. So that means having some conflict, but resolving it temporarily, and then also not bringing it up too high frequency. But you don't want to 100% avoid issues, because I have some couples where it's like a dismissive avoidant and let's say a fearful avoidant. Let's say fearful avoidant is wife, dismissive avoidant is husband. You know, maybe she was pretty anxious at first in the beginning of the relationship, but then he kept shutting down or saying things that were hurtful to her when she expressed herself. And so now she leaned way back, and now she doesn't bring up anything because she's too afraid. That's really common with fearful avoidance. And now he's not healing. This is just an example. He's not healing. He's running the show, and she's resentful, and then she's probably going to leave, and then he's going to be heartbroken. And that's not a relationship. That's a waste of both of their time when they could have saved their marriage. And sometimes it's taking that moment to still introduce conflict, even if your partner doesn't like it a little bit, just because it'll help them get comfortable. But then you don't want to lean into that too much, because it can affect the outcome of how they perceive conflict in general. We want them to be more comfortable with the idea of conflict and realize it's not bad, okay? The next one is you want to apply some consistent and reasonable boundaries, okay? The example that I want to bring up is much more common with my caseload. A lot of you guys know, like, I feel like I'm just like repeating this all the time because a lot of you guys know this, but still, I specialize in anger as well as attachment issues. So the most common boundary that is placed in these types of couples is, if you yell at me, we're not having this conversation. Or if you yell at me and curse at me, I expect an apology right away, and I expect your voice to be calm and reduced immediately. Otherwise, we're not having this conversation, and I'm not going to tell you how I feel. Whatever it is, depending on the relationship, you set that boundary because you feel unsafe. This example, I don't feel safe. If you yell at me, I'm in a separate room, whatever it is. And it depends on how you feel, because maybe your partner is not a person who yells. Whatever their issue is that you feel is an actual boundary, and boundary is different than needs. People think, I feel like I'm not getting my needs met, I'm going to set this. Could be, but a lot of times what I look at is more about a safety issue first and foremost, because some people don't know how to set boundaries because of their own attachment style. So usually where I say to start is to start with safety issues. Yelling, shouting, slamming doors, cursing, these types of things, you shouldn't be in an environment like that, right? You don't want anyone to talk to you like that. And so it doesn't matter if you love them or not. That's where you set that boundary, right? That's what should be happening. And then you want to expect apologies. You want to expect the ability for them to admit they did something wrong, and a promise to change. These are examples. The next one is acknowledge their efforts and compromise. This one is pretty obvious, and it helps individuals to become secure. You always want to acknowledge efforts. You want to compromise at the same time. So meeting them in the middle is a better way to put it. The next one is praising their commitment, attention, and compromise. And so you want to praise the compromise we were just talking about, the attention and commitment. I would say using the word commitment can be very beneficial. And so you can say, I appreciate how committed you are to our relationship. The next one is practice taking time for yourself. That doesn't necessarily take away from the relationship, but helps you build yourself to be more regulated and calm, okay? The first one, we're going to summarize, creating an inviting and safe space. The next one is consistent, not demanding. Third one is be comfortable with conflict resolution and not always rehashing things. Fourth one is you want to apply consistent, reasonable boundaries. The fifth one is acknowledge their efforts and try to compromise with that effort. The sixth one is you want to praise their commitment, attention, and their compromise. And the last one is you want to take time for yourself. I hope this video was helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.